Drive today took a little longer than I expected, but I was leading group supervision at hospice. So I know here we're learning to lead groups, and I did want to kind of get into that today, where you could be both group supervision and group clinical practice, like a clinical group, which is one of your first assignments. So leading the clinical group is definitely an important one, because sometimes that's a person's only exposure to groups in general, to just what folks do with groups. And for those that come in person today, I did bring some donuts. They had them left over at Lighthouse, but Crossroads Hospice, and had a bunch. So got some donuts. That is one of the elements to consider before a group, because as you're designing your group, as you are setting things up, you will run into stuff that the different challenges. Like if you're at an agency and you were billing for a group, you actually have to you will have to keep the seats full. I know with the global pandemic, we have had a lot of things come up where, keeping the seats full isn't as big a deal, because we're able to do it remotely now. So similar to those who took advantage to watching the YouTube, this is something to consider, because I feel like engaging folks online is even harder. I've done social work for 21 years and it's always been face-to-face. So certainly you can do it, but just like I said, only if you're really good at online classes. Don't take this one online. Just because myself, I had one online in my tenure, I did poorly in it, and I feel like I would fail a lot of the online classes nowadays, because it's not easy. It's keeping up with all the work and keeping up with folks. There's a lot of dynamics going on. So that is part of the text with introducing the group. So we talk about forming, storming, norming, and performing, and all of the above. And that's some of the stuff that will come up for you. I gave you guys some of the materials about week 2 and leading girl circle, because that certainly will help. Let me make sure I have weeks 3 through 9. I feel like my computer lost a lot of stuff this year, but oh, it's only in Word. Okay, that's okay. So with group leadership, this is kind of a primer to how you would start it out. And that one's just a Word document also, which is interesting. So here we go. Is that one docx? Perfect, here it is. So by leading the group, and like I said, I had to run the group supervision. And you do, hello, how are you? Just teaching group 2, or is that what you're in for social work?
No, I'm actually, I'm in for the intro history.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know where they are. Is that what you're trying to look for right now?
No, this 317 should be wrong.
Oh.
What's 317?
Okay. I'm hoping and making sure I'm not in the wrong room again. What time is it at?
No, it's 2 o'clock, so I'm early.
Okay. So I'm teaching a social work class and it's hybrid, so it's half online and half in person.
Oh, no.
So you're right after us, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. There should be another open room if you just want to hang out somewhere.
All right, thank
Did you have a question though? You said, are you busy? So I wanted to make sure you got your
No,
question.
that was good. I was just making sure I wasn't interrupting you.
Okay, cool. All right, well, good to meet you. So we'll go with group leadership. I'm going to start this one out for you guys. This is a class I created with a coworker at
And
UC.
welcome to our lecture on group leadership as part of group skills in the substance abuse counseling course. As we look at the objectives for the week, I want to remind you to review the materials for the week prior to viewing the lecture, as it is intended to supplement your reading. By the end of the week, you should be able to identify and describe leadership styles and the personal qualities of group leadership. As we begin our discussion of group leadership, we see a quotation from our text which reads, "The leader plays a vital role in both the dynamics of the group and the outcome of its members." Our next few slides aim to highlight the ways in which group leaders impact their groups and the various styles, qualities, and techniques that guide group leadership. Let's talk first for a minute about leadership and anxiety. In your Hill and Harris reading this week, you read about two different types of anxiety that often accompany group leadership: content anxiety and process anxiety. Content anxiety refers to whether or not a leader knows the material to be covered in the group, while process anxiety refers to the ability to control the group when certain behaviors occur. Both of these anxieties can be addressed through preparation, but group leaders who are experts in content may still experience process anxiety, either running a group multiple times. Preparation and co-leadership are two tips for beating anxiety, and you can refer to the Hill and Harris chapter for even more helpful suggestions. Keep in mind that anxiety can be helpful for leaders, as it activates us and can serve to increase attention and focus. Avoidance can also result from anxiety, which ultimately serves to maintain anxiety rather than actually avoiding or addressing it. As we know, leaders help get organized and develop, and the style in which they execute these roles have an impact on group dynamics. Most group leaders show flexibility in their style, working to match their behavior with the purpose of the group and its membership. Leadership styles include the conventional authoritarian approach, where the leader takes on the role of the expert and demands obedience from members, while the democratic approach is less directive and more group-centered. Democratic leaders tend to facilitate rather than direct group members, and rely on trusting the group members to take care of themselves. A laissez-faire approach means providing no structure or direction to the group, and instead the group operates on its own, which may result in a lack of clear purpose or goals. Leaderless groups rotate the leadership, which may or may not include some kind of leadership training. This style can be constructive, but it can also be destructive to groups, and not an appropriate model when members are experiencing moderate to severe disturbances. Regardless of style, leaders must promote sharing among members within the group, and are wise to consider the type of group and its purpose. A task or psychoeducational group needs leaders who can direct and keep the group focused on the topic or job at hand, while counseling groups may require more support and caring, as well as structure and sometimes confidence. No matter what style, leaders must attend to the core mechanisms of group leadership, which include emotional stimulation, caring, meaning attribution, and executive function. So one of the focuses this week is to talk about leadership, and we're going to do that by thinking about two components: traits and skills. Traits are the who I am as a leader, those things that we bring as part of our own individual approach. And the skills are the what I do. And those are things that may come naturally to us, but typically we've learned them, we may model them. The skills approach more has to do with the behaviors and the actions. Let's look at each individual. Here you see some traits that group leaders display. Group leaders are courageous. They're willing to model. Group leaders are very present and genuine. Group leaders are caring and believe in the group process. Group leaders remain open and are non-defensive. They're culturally aware and empathic. Group leaders are powerful and possess stamina. Group leaders are committed to self-care and increasing self-awareness. Group leaders possess a sense of humor, are inventive, and are dedicated. The trait approach to leadership is not supported by the literature or the research, but this trait approach can help the leader and the group work more effectively together as they strive to achieve goals. Now looking at skills, we see that group leaders should be able to demonstrate active listening and reflecting as part of their leadership. Group leaders need to be able to clarify and summarize what's going on within the group, as well as facilitate and empathize. Group leaders display the ability to interpret and question, as well as linking member comments to unite members of the group. Group leaders need to be able to both confront and support, which may happen together. Group leaders need to be able to do blocking, which we talk about, but basically as group members begin to demonstrate behaviors that did not belong in that group, whether it be gossiping or asking a lot of why questions, one skill that leaders display is being able to block that. Other skills include assessing, modeling, and suggesting, as well as initiating and evaluating and terminating. Your book also provides the Association for Specialists in Group, or ASGW, professional standards for training group workers, which contains 16 skills, and you can find that on page 63 of your text. The leadership skills are used to promote safety and growth in the group context, and may be more or less appropriate depending on the leadership style that has been selected. Someone who's decided on a laissez-faire approach is unlikely to use confronting in the same way that an authoritarian approach may, but skills like active listening and supporting are necessary regardless of leadership style. In your discussion board this week, you'll be asked to select 3 traits and 3 skills to explore in depth and reflect on some questions that I've given you. And you may use these slides or anything in the book to bring into the discussion board. Let's talk a little bit about group leadership roles. Group leaders have various roles throughout the life of the group, and they include traffic director, when leaders help members become aware of behaviors that open communication channels, and those inhibit communication as well. The role as traffic director is both proactive and reactive in the prevention of certain behaviors, and comes across in a non-judgmental way. A similar role is that of modeler of appropriate behavior. And so leaders must be responsible for being very intentional about the actions that they exhibit and the way they demonstrate things like communication within the group. Specific behaviors that modeling may help with include self-disclosure, and role plays can offer an opportunity for modeling as well. Group leaders may pay careful attention to voice tone and body language as part of their role as modeler of appropriate behavior. Another role that group leadership demands is that of the interactional catalyst, which means that leaders promote interaction between group members without calling attention to themselves. This can be done through questioning, whether to or linking. So as group members begin to talk about similar things, group leaders can begin to link those together, encourage members to speak directly to one another rather than just sort of generally speaking to the group or being a bit vague. But the interactional catalyst role requires that group leaders encourage that interaction among the members. The final group leadership role here is of communication facilitator, where group leaders reflect the content and the feeling of members and teach them, again, almost modeling here, for other members to be able to use this as well, to be able to reflect the content and the feeling. Group leaders may note when someone is conveying that they're feeling depressed, or offering some of what they're seeing in tone or body language, that they're not smiling, or that they sort of lack energy in their communication. This helps members focus on the expression of the words and then also the emotion behind the words. And again, hopefully group members are picking up on this, and then they're able to develop this as well. Each of these roles can be found in your book on page 68 and 69. The next piece to talk about here is leaders and their role in group conflict. There are 5 specific techniques outlined in your text for managing conflict in the group, as proposed by Simpson and elaborated on by Kromansky. When group conflict occurs, leaders may select from various options for managing that conflict, which include withdrawal from that conflict, where leaders step back, almost sort of push a pause button, and take some time to gather more information before diving in or addressing that conflict. It allows leaders to consult and use resolution strategies later. And one disadvantage of this is that conflict may escalate in the time when the leader has withdrawn and is gathering more information. So there is the potential that by not acting immediately, the conflict could escalate. Another option is suppressing the conflict, which basically involves playing it down and is effective when the conflict that's occurring is relatively minor. Keeps emotions under control, and one disadvantage of this is that it doesn't necessarily resolve the conflict, and it allows feelings to potentially continue without being addressed, and they may come back up later if they are strong enough. Additionally, leaders who suppress conflict, decide to use suppression here, may be perceived as weak or not wanting to address it or not able to address it by basically suppressing or minimizing it. Another option is integrating conflicting ideas to form new solutions. So basically in this scenario, groups try to get everybody to re-examine the situation. And then the idea here is to develop new alternatives, think about different ways to be talking about the issue, to be addressing the issue. Mediation is one piece here where basically a third party comes in to take in all the information and then help think of a new decision, a new resolution here. One disadvantage of the integrative approach is that it can take a lot of time, and it requires that the conflicting members are able to set aside their differences, and that implies willingness, which may not always be present. Working out a compromise is another approach, another strategy here. And in this method, basically members are encouraged to each give up a little bit in developing a win-win situation where you can, instead of one party out fully as the winner and one party coming out fully as the loser, each decides to give up a little bit so that everybody can feel good about the decision that is made or the eventual action that takes place. One disadvantage here is that it may, that in sort of deciding what to give up and what to keep and deciding on what that most important thing is, the potential for one side or the other to inflate their wants and to sort of basically to ask for too much and not want to give up anything. There's a potential for that when you're asking somebody to compromise. Finally, and perhaps the most difficult strategy is using power to resolve the conflict as group leader. And basically what this requires is that group leaders use their position power, their personality, to basically encourage members to, or persuade members really, to select a course of action. And this can be very difficult, and you need to pay very close attention to the leadership approach that you're using because, for instance, in a laissez-faire approach or certainly in a leaderless approach, this would not be congruent with the way you're approaching your group work. Again, these strategies can be found on page 69 and page 70, and it's important to keep in mind that these 5 strategies are outlined. There are many other ways to deal with conflict, but that each of these may be effective, has advantages and disadvantages. And basically, it needs to be addressed contextually based on what's going on within that specific group, in that specific group conflict. And leaders must select what approach is going to have the highest potential for success in that moment. Co-leadership is an opportunity for 2 leaders to collaborate in a mutually determined manner, which means that they have taken some time to decide how this co-leadership experience and relationship work in order to facilitate group work. Co-leaders may be especially helpful with groups of 12 or more due to the size, but can also be very effective with smaller groups and when working with children. Co-leaders are typically most effective when they share their thoughts about the group and they're on the same page, but they bring different skill sets and behaviors to the group, so they complement one another. Co-leaders work together in the planning and reflection, as well as evaluating the group. So really each of the steps co-leaders should work together in. Supervisors can train both leaders, or supervisors can participate as a co-leader with a supervisee. Like with most things, there are advantages and disadvantages, and in our text, Gladding points out a handful of advantages of co-leadership, and I encourage you to refer back to these on page 72. They include dealing with difficult situations, modeling, feedback, shared specialized knowledge, and some pragmatic considerations. There are also potential limitations to group leadership, which include lack of coordinated efforts, too leader-focused, competition and collusion. And again, these can be found in more detail on your text on page 73. As we summarize at the end of this lecture here, we keep in mind that group leaders may expect some anxiety, either content anxiety, which is concerned with material covered in the group, or process anxiety, which refers to the ability to control the group when certain behaviors occur. Leadership styles may vary, but leaders should be aware of how leadership style matches the type and the purpose of the group they are leading. Traits and skills also play a role in leadership, with traits describing the who I am as a leader and skills describing the what I do aspect of leadership. There are 4 distinct group leader roles, and then also 5 strategies for managing conflict that we've explored. And each of those are going to depend on where the group is and the group leader being able to meet group needs in that moment. Finally, co-leadership provides leaders with the opportunity to collaborate and train by sharing the leadership role. Co-leadership requires considerable preparation and is not without limitations. The advantages are also significant when executed effectively. This concludes our week 3 lecture on group leadership. Thanks for listening.
All right, so as you hear in that class, we created, when I was teaching at UC, a lot of things with group leadership. Oh, sorry, Madison, the audio is skipping on this end. It does skip a little bit at the end, so that's about right. And the essence of it is, first off, knowing who you are. So when you lead a group, it's helpful to know who you are and how you handle different situations, because in groups, you have a lot of things come up. I mentioned today I had group supervision, and I do that every Friday for, it could be possible that it is, just reset your browser if needed, or obviously make sure to come in person because it is every day. Which I've also offered the group supervision available on Zoom. And that is something that I actually have not had a supervisee. And they wanted Zoom yet because they feel that they get more out of it in person. I mentioned in this COVID era, we do have some of the electronic things, or some of us might have so much going on, several jobs where you have to catch things in between jobs live and whatnot. Cool, glad that worked for you guys. But essentially figuring out what type of a group leader you are. Now, when you do get some of that and figure some of it out, it will be helpful for which type of group you want to go watch. Like if you want to work with kids, maybe watch a group led at Lighthouse Youth Services, or maybe go work to have the supervisor let you in at Ohio Mentor, a place where they do mental health groups there. Obviously, there is some of the online options I'd mentioned for your first group observation. Do in a few weeks. If you want to watch it online, an open AA meeting is a possibility. There's also Al-Anon, which has a lot of online options, and those can be found at either aa.org or searching for open Al-Anon meetings, open Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And seeing those that have co-leadership and how that helps. Sometimes in our trauma group, we did co-lead groups, and it helps when your co-leader is on board with you in a lot of the things that you do, because occasionally you could have differences in opinion and want to lead the group differently. So it's good to get that out of the way while you're practicing, while you're behaving and doing what you do to lead the groups. And then also on that evaluation of trying to figure out who you are and what you like about group leadership, how you're going to handle it, how you're going to have folks during COVID. Will you give them an online option? Some of those that are court ordered and they have to do a DUI might not get the online option, and that makes it a little bit harder. Also, those that have, compliance with the courts, you may have to write some of your notes in a way that it keeps their information confidential. So just preparing yourself for everything that can come your way. I know a few of you will be starting your internships within the next year, so really narrowing down what you'd like to do. And that's why we give you this chance to observe some groups. You only have to write your paper on one, but if you want to observe 2, 3, 4, or 5, as many as you'd like, get an idea of what you like in social work practice and what you'd like to do. And that'll help. That'll help a ton. As I've mentioned, sometimes groups take a turn in a different direction that you never expected. So that's when being open-minded, even laissez-faire, is helpful, because you're able to roll with things and let your either group members or supervisees bring things to the group that concerns them, or what are their unmet needs and how you can resolve them, and have them make that specific request for you. So I know most groups last about as long as this class will lead. So you can also look at leading a class as a group effort, and a lot of people do. So 10 to 12 weeks is kind of your max, and that's also what about a semester is. So again, getting ready for the semester, observing groups. So for the next few weeks, turning that assignment at the end of the syllabus, you fill out the answers to those questions. Then next, preparing to lead your mental health group. And then finally, doing the preparation to write a group proposal, even if that's using a form of a grant or going online to grants.gov and finding funding for your current agency you're working at. So that is all I have for today. Know that if you have questions or would like to email, you can, and I will see you guys next week. So have a good one.